You guys feeling energetic?
Always energetic. I am triple energetic.
Oh my god.
You know why I'm feeling triple energetic?
Oh, topical. Why?
Because we have 3 different energy systems that we use. Don't we, Darren?
Well, funny you mentioned that. Because we do have a number of energy systems,
Yes.
which could be divided into 3.
Yeah. So you've got aerobic and anaerobic.
That's probably the 2 that most people are, most familiar with.
Yeah. And within anaerobic, there's actually 2.
Yeah, and even within aerobic, there's probably 2.
Yeah.
But aside from aerobic and anaerobic, you've also got my favorite energy system,
ATP.
which is your phosphagen creatine system.
Yeah.
Is ATP correct? Is that another way of saying it?
Well, ATP is like your body's currency for energy, right?
Oh, okay. So it's not how you would describe the system. It is...
Every energy system produces ATP.
Okay.
So ATP is the result of these energy systems. How they get to the resulting ATP is different, but yeah, think about ATP as like your, like I said, your currency, right? Like to make energetic transactions, you gotta have some ATP. But then these energy systems are your like your body's salary or whatever. They're topping up your bank account every time.
Right. So winding it back, 3 energy systems. You got anaerobic.
Yep.
Anaerobic. Aerobic is your long form.
And aerobic.
Anaerobic, anaerobic and
Yes, yeah.
aerobic.
Thank you. I thought you said anaerobic twice.
Oh,
I
no,
was
no.
very confused.
So aerobic
Yeah.
is your longer form duration of cardiovascular training or any type of training, really.
Yep.
And then your anaerobic is your shorter. And within anaerobic, you've got your lactic and alactic.
Yep. But
One is short bursts of energy, think like 100-meter sprint.
well, typically no. So typically they don't really, even though your phosphagen system is an anaerobic system, they don't consider it the 2 anaerobic systems, right? So phosphagen creatine.
No, I'm just trying to lay out for everyone listening what are the energy systems, and then how does ATP play into each of those systems?
Yeah. So if you think of, like you said, 100-meter sprint, right? Think about it more about the time that it takes you to perform these exercises, right? So
Time and intensity.
time and intensity. So if you're going, an all-out sprint for 10 seconds, that's going to be your phosphagen system, which is kind of different to what most people talk about as your anaerobic system, which is, your lactic acid system. And, whenever you're converting glucose, or if it's stored as glycogen, to energy, that's usually what people mean by your anaerobic system. And that's usually things that are from, say, about 10 seconds to about 2 minutes.
Right. So
And
we're
then-
talking let's just talk running terms, right? Because that's probably the easiest way to understand it.
So sprinting
Anywhere
is
between
phosphagen.
a 100-meter sprint and a 400-meter sprint
Yeah.
would be that middle system. And then you've got your 100-meter sprint, and then you've got long distance, which is your aerobic.
So anything over 2 minutes is kind of your aerobic. Although 400 meters is kind of
Still
a bit short.
maybe 800.
Yeah, maybe 800 for anaerobic.
Which one is resistance training? That's anaerobic, isn't it?
Well, it depends on the type of resistance training that you're doing. High rep versus low rep, right?
Standard
circuits.
8 rep,
It's probably anaerobic. Think about the time it's going to take you to do a set of that, right?
Because I've always thought, and I think this is what's generally taught, is like running in general is aerobic, or cardio is aerobic, whereas resistance is anaerobic.
Or it depends how fast you run.
No, of course, but that's as a general rule, that's how you might compare one to the other.
Well, sprinting I wouldn't call aerobic. If you're doing sprint interval sessions and things like that, it becomes aerobic. But if you're just doing an all-out 100-meter sprint, I wouldn't consider that aerobic.
So that's more or less the same sort of exercise as a 6 to 8 rep, I don't know, chest press.
Well, it's different, but it's uses similar energy systems.
In the context of energy, that's what I mean.
Well, it's more, these energy systems don't live in isolation. They're not absolutes, right? It's more like gears in your car, right? Sometimes you're in first gear, sometimes you're in second gear, sometimes you're in third gear. But if you're, on your journey, throughout your journey from your home to to the footy field,
It's a
you're
good
shifting
analogy.
gears, right? Like you're shifting gears depending what you do.
There are a few things.
It could be a long. No, that was a really good analogy.
Your euphemisms.
Okay, I'm gonna explain it why that is a really good analogy. You might be going for a really cruisy Sunday drive,
Yep.
right? Or, long distance cruisy run. Mm-hmm. At certain points in that run or that drive, you are going to have to shift down into second gear to climb a hill, right? You can't stay in fourth gear climbing a hill. So you will then switch the type of energy system.
Can you drive a manual car? How?
No.
No, I was wondering why it wasn't making sense to him. Okay, when you're in an Uber,
You see the guy playing with the thing in the middle.
yeah,
I thought he was just fiddling with the what's it called, the handbrake.
that's why Hal sits in the middle front seat. Boom. So yes, that it's the same thing. Long distance run, you will actually switch over to different energy systems because you've got hill climbs, you've got this certain, the sprint to the finish could be different.
And circling back to your weightlifting, right? So while you're lifting weights, that's anaerobic. But while you're, after you finish your set, you're breathing heavy, right? That's your aerobic system working hard to replenish your ATP. Now, these systems work very differently, right? So, you've got your phosphagen, your anaerobic, your aerobic. Which system has the highest capacity?
What do you mean capacity?
Capacity, like
Yep.
which can produce the most ATP?
I reckon phosphagen.
It's aerobic.
Damn.
Because, if you think about the duration of a marathon, if you can run a marathon, that's a lot of energy. Right, so you need really high capacity because the duration of this exercise is going to be quite long.
See, I wish you'd rephrase the question then.
Okay, but on the other side, it's going to be easy now. Which energy system has the fastest rate of ATP production?
Phosphagen.
Exactly. So
Right.
that's basically how it works.
See,
right?
that's what I thought. Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I thought you meant.
Well, I said capacity. So
With zero context.
yeah,
But
but
that makes sense. It's like, okay, which energy system do you think you would use the most to expend the most amount of energy at any point in time? Of course, it's going to be your anaerobic because you can do more cardio than you can any other sort of exercise.
yeah.
in
So,
general.
but basically, how it works is your phosphagen system. These numbers are going to be made up. 'Cause I don't know the real numbers, but say it
Disclaimer.
releases 1 ATP, right? For it's gonna take you thousands of molecules of ATP to do a sprint or whatever. But say it releases 1 ATP, that's enough for you to do your sprint, right? But then your fuel tank's empty of phosphagen. So then you're gonna, as soon as that's empty, you're gonna start shifting into anaerobic, and obviously your legs gonna start moving a bit slower. But although you do have a bit more capacity there, right? Because you're converting glucose into energy. So then this blood sugar is becoming ATP. So say that's at 30 ATPs, right? So you're getting a bit more, but it takes a little bit longer. Then say by the time you get to aerobic, when your legs are just jelly and you're basically walking now at the end of this all-out run, sprint, whatever, you're going to be producing 200 ATPs from a process called oxidative phosphorylation, and that's going to take a long time.
Spell that. Use it in a sentence.
He just did use it in a sentence.
But yeah, so basically that's how it works. Fast rate, high capacity. It's depending on what you do.
You go.
I'm more or less switching topics entirely, but I was going to ask, can you name different ingredients or different type of foods that would contribute to each of these energy systems? I imagine that each one has different a fuel source.
Yes, it does have different fuel sources, but it's more about your stored fuel sources, right? So
because you mentioned glycogen and you mentioned glucose before. I imagine glucose is more for your cardio and the anaerobic system.
glycogen and glucose is pretty much the same thing, right?
Okay.
Like glycogen is just how your body stores glucose.
Right.
So yeah, that's for your anaerobic system, right? So think about glucose.
Sugar. So it comes from what, food more than anything else?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
It's going to
high
come
sugar
from
foods.
food, but your body can produce it from proteins or whatever.
What?
How else are you going to get sugars
Yeah.
if you don't get them from food?
I wasn't expecting to be challenged there. I'm just
And
leading the horse to water.
And then your phosphagen system, your body can produce creatine, but it's much better when you supplement with Musashi creatine.
Okay, here's a question. Can your body produce enough creatine to sustain a lot of this type of energy and activity?
It can, because, there's sprinters out there that have never taken creatine in their life. However, does taking additional creatine to what your body can produce provide a benefit? Then yes, we know that's true, because creatine is one of the most studied ingredients of all time.
Yep.
And then, when it comes to your aerobic system, this is where fat is actually, at these lower intensities, carbohydrates and fat is pretty much what's fueling you. And if you're going to extreme endurance, you literally, break down your muscles to produce energy.
Especially if you're already very lean.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't have much body fat stores to tap into.
What roles do electrolytes and B vitamins play in the 3 energy systems? How do they contribute to fueling your exercise?
Well, B vitamins, vitamins in general, are going to be pretty important in converting the food that you eat into energy or stored energy.
Is that the role of like a B6 and a B12? Do they actually help you convert energy from another source? Is that their function?
That's part of their function, but in this process I just talked about, oxidative phosphorylation, it's a multi-step process, right? That's why it takes so long to produce all this ATP. But throughout that process, it's going to have inputs and outputs of different compounds in your body, right? Some of these come from vitamins.
Do you reckon more people produce ATP at different rates, depending on who you are?
Oh, definitely,
Based on what?
Based on training.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Like, you're not born with these energy systems optimized. Different exercises and different training, ultimately changes how your energy systems perform, and, your different types of muscle that you have. Fast twitch muscle is going to favor, fast twitch exercises like your things that use your phosphagen system and your anaerobic system, whereas slow twitch muscle is, really about your aerobic system.
So that's why genetics can play a lot into it as well. It's like if you're a heavily muscled person, you're generally going to gravitate or be better at anaerobic style of sports. Whereas like your long distance runners, they're not built like sprinters.
Well, if we're simplifying that to the point of idiocy, that you're saying that a long distance runner is better at long distance because they train long distance running, whereas a sprinter may be better at sprinting.
But they might
train.
But there's probably a genetic component too.
Yeah, like if a long distance runner was genetically suited to be running long distance, they can train to be a sprinter as much as they want. If they can't put on muscle tissue or they don't have much fast twitch muscle fiber, it's going to be tough for them to be a good competitive sprinter.
Gotcha.
If you're Jamaican, you might have a bit of, be born with a bit more fast twitch fibers, whereas if you're Ethiopian, you might be born with a bit more slow twitch, right?
Yeah, or if you're a white guy, you've got no twitch.
Yeah.
You've just got nothing.
Yeah, ask Woody Harrelson about that.
I'll ask you about that.
White men can't jump.
I heard you throwing up triple doubles in your game, Hal. What energy systems do you think a game of basketball uses?
All three, for sure.
Yeah.
But I'd say definitely more, depends. Phosphagen for sure. There's a lot of sprinting, but definitely aerobic as well, because it's for such a long period of time.
Yeah, I think it's more the jumping that would be phosphagen, right?
Yeah.
That's explosive.
Yeah.
I don't know about the sprinting, because you're not really sprinting.
You are, but not as frequently as you are just like running at a moderate pace.
Yeah, and it's really a really short sprint.
Yeah.
We're not talking 100 meters here. It's, it might be 5 meters to sprint for the ball,
or like down the court would be, 80.
Even that, I don't know. Are you truly sprinting when you're running back down the court?
But basketball is probably a sport where you're changing gears very fast.
Yeah, a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of sports are. I think even endurance athletes are pretty unaware that they could benefit from supplements like creatine as well.
Yeah.
Like that analogy you used before, they are constantly shifting gears.
What about jiu-jitsu?
Anaerobic?
No, it'd be the same as basketball. You flick in between.
Yeah.
Really? Even though you spend most of your time
there's a lot of just
displaying
static
holding, and there's a lot of that.
It's probably need quite a bit of anaerobic conditioning.
There's explosions of, but it's not,
I don't think there's that light jog that you have in basketball as much, right?
Well, there's a bit of that. Depends
There
on
are
your
also-
on the style of your game.
There are
Yeah,
also
true.
a lot of breakages in basketball, as in breakages in time.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
timeouts even during the play. Three players can be standing in the corner waiting for the ball.
What about powerlifting, Darren?
Powerlifting is easy. It's 100%.
Bang bang.
Every competition lift is less than 10 seconds, right?
Yeah.
It's one rep.
Nice.
So it's pretty easy analogy to understand.
Yeah.
Powerlifting and sprinting are, the two most
Mhm.
phosphagen heavy things that you can do.
So when you you have an all-out sprint, or you've lifted one maximal sort of rep, deadlifting or whatever, how long does it take for your ATP to build back up again?
Well, different people are different, right?
Yeah.
Like some people can go back and sprint pretty quickly, but it also depends on, how well your aerobic system is trained, because
Good.
that's how, you replenish this ATP
Yeah.
at the same time.
So the fitter you are aerobically could actually benefit you for a different form of energy.
And a lot of
system use.
powerlifters don't know that, but
Yeah. Well, that's why I was asking. It's
But on
like
the other
even as a
hand-
powerlifter,
Yeah.
you should be training your aerobic system as well.
100%. But on the other hand, you don't want to train it too much and
Yeah, compromise.
compromise your main thing, which is fast twitch, explosive movements.
Mm.
Basketball's almost. I'm not going to use the word the opposite, but it's different in the sense that it's like you almost don't want to be training your your aerobic
Yeah.
fitness as much, because it is mostly just like running at pace.
Yeah.
So going for a 5 to 10 kilometer run might be good for your health in general, good for your anaerobic fitness, but it might not really help you on the basketball court.
Well,
I reckon it would.
Yeah.
How long's a basketball game?
Anywhere between, depends on the level, 45 to 90 minutes.
So you need to be conditioned to go for 45 to 90 minutes.
And I would argue the best way to do that is to do interval training, like sprinting, not a long, slow run.
Well, I would recommend both.
Yeah.
I would recommend some days a long, slow run and some days doing your sprints. You
Basi-
look at, I equate, you look at basketball like mixed martial arts, right? It's shorter duration, like it could be 15 minutes through to 25-minute fight, but not all of that is just, constantly at it. There's periods where they're sort of just switching between energy systems as well. But you need to train all.
You have
all
to
three.
train all, yeah, because while you're sprinting and jumping, byproducts of these systems of your anaerobic or lactic acid system, right? That's going to be cleared by your slow twitch muscle that you're building from your aerobic system, right? Like that's why when we sprint, sometimes we go for our lunchtime workouts, I end up throwing up because I get a build.
That's so gross.
I get a build up of lactic acid because I'm all fast twitch. And actually, I was part of an experiment once where they
drilled into you.
They drilled into my thighs.
Yeah.
This muscle on your upper thighs, your vastus medialis. They took a little pea-size piece of muscle out.
Yeah.
It's called muscle biopsy, and they analyzed it for the pronation angle and fiber composition. I was pretty much all fast twitch because that's when I was competing quite heavily in powerlifting.
Mm. You melted the test tube as well, apparently.
Yeah, it's a bit radioactive.
Tell me more about your thighs.
We've mentioned fast, medium, slow twitch muscle fiber a lot in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So should we be training all of those muscles as well?
Well, you should, but also
dependent on your sport.
Depends
right?
on your sport and your activity, right? Like a basketball player or a boxer or somebody that needs to kind of have a bit of everything, needs to explode, but needs to keep going. And you should definitely train everything, and it's all going to have a crossover. Whereas if you're a sprint cyclist, focus on sprint cycling, and if you're training for the, I don't know, if you're a powerlifter, you got to lift the weights, right? That's your priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's your main exercises and your accessories.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the question I asked before, for each of these three energy systems, can you speak to a fuel for each one? So obviously phosphagen, main fuel system would be what, creatine?
Yep.
Whereas aerobic fitness would be
anaerobic,
glucose.
you could roughly say is carbs.
Yeah. Okay.
And your aerobic, it's more about your metabolic health. So, that's where things like electrolytes and vitamins are going to be quite important. But really, it's using carbs and fat as fuel.
Interesting.
But, it's more about how well trained your body is at using those.
What if you don't have? What if you're depleted in carbs and fairly lean? What happens then? What does your body use for energy?
Well, if you're empty of glycogen and carbs, and you don't have much fat to use, it's going to end up breaking down your muscle. So your body can actually convert muscle into glucose, and then it'll use that as energy.
Which I'm assuming is why even if you're, say, a long distance runner, short distance runner, even if you're not lifting a whole lot of weight, protein is a good idea for your diet.
Yeah,
100%.
protein helps everything. Because ultimately, remember, it's about the muscle. Fast twitch and slow twitch is all muscle, and muscle is made from protein.
You can only store so much gas in the gas tank too. So depending on the length and the intensity of the exercise, you could utilize all those stored carbs.
I don't like the way you phrase that.
I've got another analogy for you.
Yeah.
Hal. So
lay it on me.
Fast twitch and slow twitch, right? Think about red meat and white meat.
Yep.
All right. So think about a cow. It's just
Moo.
moving along. Moving slowly from patch to patch, just like a sheep, right? Sheeps go bah. But anyway, when you eat the meat of a cow or a sheep or lamb, it's red, right? Because it's well oxygenated.
Name more animals that produce red meat, Darren. Keep going.
Well,
You're
okay.
at 3. Keep going.
Kangaroo, bear,
Deer.
deer.
I think I heard a duck is red meat.
Nah,
To be verified.
that's grey.
Yeah.
Make your point. I was kidding.
Anyway, so red meat, right? Like, think about how these animals live. They've got a lot of, oxygenation in their blood. They're really good at aerobic things, slow, long exercises. Now, you think about white meat. Think about how a chicken runs around.
Crocodile.
It's sprinting, all right? It's explosive.
Fish.
Fish swimming through water explosively. That's all, not full of the hemoglobin and things that you see. And
They're quick.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
that's
I never
explosive,
thought
right?
about that. Yeah.
So
Why does red meat contain more creatine than white meat?
that's a good question.
We'll look that up and we'll get back to you all on that.
No, we'll just cut that.
But
down.
yeah, that's just one way to think about it. Of different muscles and different activities, right?
Thanks.
Like it's like animal muscles, not the same.
What color would your meat be?
Definitely white meat.
The other white meat.
Anyway,
I got a question for you, Darren.
Uh-oh.
Which energy system did Miyamoto Musashi use the most during his sword fights? I think you should refer to the book and find a quote where he talks about which energy system he used.
Baby, the other white meat.
Okay, this is
That movie. I love that movie.
okay. This is going to be an interesting one.
Let him scour through those.
I can't wait for the day you actually pick out a quote that is like word for word super specific to the topic we're talking about.
Do you do long distance training as well, Hal? Or
No,
you
I do.
Just mainly sprints.
Well, I do like most of my sprinting is 100 to 200 meter sprints, but I try and minimize the rest in between. So I end up running like 3Ks plus, but like in a sprint fashion and then resting in between.
Do you do shorter sprints for basketball? Like
I do everything. So I start for like 5 meter sprints and do sets of 4 and then work all my way up to 200 or 400. So I'm hitting all of it.
what a good quote.
Here we go.
It
won't be, but here we go.
This is like word for word what we're talking about. Okay.
How did you just get that on the page?
Ooh.
There is no difference between walking and running into battle or walking and running in everyday life, except for speed.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. I like that.
That is good.
I like
That's
that.
pretty good.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah. Damn.
Wow.
That's gonna be hard to beat.
Yep.
That is very
That
good.
is deep.
That is pretty deep.
So there is no difference walking or running in training and in battle or sports field. So train like how you play.
Both. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Speed's the difference.
that's the most important thing. Is
Yeah.
just train appropriately.
That's your best quote, yeah.
Yeah.
Good one.
Too
Nice.
much weights, not enough speed work.
Okay.
It's a New Zealand joke. You'll get it one day.
Fuck is it? Okay, whatever. Let's wrap this up.
All right. Musashi out.
Out.